Hi guys, the JazzieNerd here, and welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Snippet. This today is the first week of a 4-week mini-series, I guess you could call it, of Sunday Snippets that will all tie into Easter, which is on March the 27th this year. I could probably do all 4 of these in one episode fairly easily because they all tie into one another that well, if I've planned them properly. But that would be a very long episode, and I like to shoot for around 5 minutes on these. So, here we go with the first week. So, as written in John chapter 19, verse 30, Jesus' last words when he was on the cross were, "It is finished." The question I want to answer today, for the first week of this 4-week mini-series, is, what does that mean? What is finished? And it actually has a, simple if you're a Christian, potentially complicated if you're not, answer. You may have heard Christians talking about God's plan, or as I like to call it, the master plan, capital M, capital P. These days, people mostly talk about it in terms of their singular lives. You know, God has a plan for my life, God has a plan for your life. You hear people talk about that a lot. Or they talk about it to help themselves feel better after a tragedy or a failure, saying that, everything happens for a reason, which I know you've heard. People say that a lot, and I don't think they usually know exactly what it means, but oh well. The master plan, capital M, capital P, is a whole lot bigger than that. It started way back in the book of Genesis with the original sin. I know it didn't actually happen the way the book of Genesis says it did, but if you believe that sin is a thing, then logically speaking, there had to be a first time. So, original sin. And that original sin essentially erected a wall between man and God. Erected a wall between man and God. And in the Bible, that was signified by the curtain that separated the holy place where the Ark of the Covenant was kept from the rest of the temple. Only the high priest was allowed to go back there, and then only on certain days, and after performing a ritual of self-purification. According to the sermon that I heard in church today, there was a story about how the high priest have to stay up all night before going back there, and someone would stay up with him to make sure he didn't fall asleep, just in case he had a R-rated dream and wrecked the whole thing. Anyway, the Bible says in Mark chapter 15, verse 37, that shortly after Jesus died, the book of Mark makes it sound like the moment he died, this happened. The curtain was torn in two, from top to bottom, symbolizing the final and permanent destruction of that barrier. So what Jesus finished by dying on that cross was God's plan to redeem mankind from the original sin. Why he waited so long is anyone's guess. Seriously, not a clue. No one has a clue. But either way, this shows a real connection between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and at least partially resolves the apparent discrepancy between them. I was talking to someone once, and I was talking about how well the Bible lines up, and he laughed in my face, because the Testaments seem to have a bit of a discrepancy. On one hand, you've got this wrathful God who makes you pay for your sin in blood, sometimes yours. And on the other hand, you've got the loving God who would die for us. Well, it's not really that different. I mean, he's certainly not, schizophrenic or indecisive. I've heard some people call him that. He just had to deal a little bit more harshly with us for a while he set everything up for the final redemption. He had a plan the whole time. And if you'll pardon the, I don't know what to call this, actually. Thank God! Thank God. Because, let's face it, we'd all be in a pretty bad place if the resurrection hadn't happened. So anyway, I'm going to end this here. I'll be back next week for the second part of this series. Until then, stay jazzy.